So this video feels like a special one to me. We being myself, Christopher, and John Vervaeke, co-taught our fourth Circling into Dialogos weekend, which was just phenomenal and continues to grow and be more and more incredible. And we're learning so much through it. And it's become such a meaningful part of my life and keeps growing into that. And this conversation feels like it shows a growth of the practice and a real demonstration of what's possible with dialectic into dialogos as a practice. So we wanted to make this video, and we made it actually during the weekend while we were teaching. And we wanted to give another demonstration video. And I think that this one exceeded our expectations in providing that, specifically because we picked the virtue of hope, precisely because all three of us kind of had our difficulties understanding how hope was a virtue exactly. You know, especially considering how hope can be so unwise often and lead to justifications for non-action and all kinds of problems with hope. And it seems to be more, kind of at first glance, it seems to be more of an attitude than a virtue, really. So we all kind of came into hope more ambiguous than with other virtues. So that's why we picked it. And so you can really feel us in this video going right into those doubts and that struggle, and you can feel it opening up and revealing more of itself, ever deepening in an ever deepening way. That all three, it just went beyond all three of us, literally. It was, I would say, this is a quite intense dialogue. So I think it's a great example of the practice and where this practice is headed. I think it's a really good example of what we're doing what we're attempting to do in the Circling into Dialogos practice as a whole. So I'm really excited to present this video to you. So enjoy, and there is more to come.
Thanks, guys. All right. Okay.
You want to take a minute, just silence, and
Yeah.
I'll time it. Right. So we're doing this on hope. Christopher, you're going to be the first
proposer.
Give a proposer. So I have one question for you, Chris. What is hope?
When I think of hope, I struggle to think of it as a virtue. When I bring it to mind, is an attitude. And that attitude can be foolish just as easily as it can be wise, because we can hope for spurious reasons. We can have hope that's misplaced, and that hope can lead us to inaction when there should be action, or vice versa. So that can't be it. It can't just be an attitude. So then I think, okay,
the first layer when you think about it is it's an attitude, but when you drill down, and it can't be an attitude.
it can't be an attitude. Okay, so what is it then about hope that makes it wise?
What is it about hope that makes it wise?
What is it about hope that makes it wise? When it shows up in an attitude, how can we trace out the wisdom in the attitude? My proposal is that hope is a virtue insofar as it leads us to love what we don't already have and we don't already know. And therefore is proleptic, meaning in advance of ourselves.
Yeah.
Related to our ignorance and related to what we haven't already in hand. So I'll repeat that one more time. My proposal is that hope is virtuous insofar as it is a love for what we don't already have, or a concern, a relationship with, a concern for what we don't already have, what we don't already know.
What we don't already know. Huh. So love. Actually, John, did you write that down?
Yes, I did.
Could you read it off to us just so we can hear it?
So hope is a virtue insofar as it leads us to love or concern for what we don't already know or have. In this way, it is proleptic. It is related to our ignorance.
Yeah. Huh. So in listening to that, I'm just curious, and hearing that back, what happens for you, Chris?
When I hear that back, I wonder where the implicit positivity of hope, what that is and what place that has.
Yeah.
How much of hope is implicitly positive?
Yeah.
Because the proposal I made of it actually is neutral of affect. It doesn't imply positivity of attitude or negativity of attitude. So that's already missing.
Well, I'm wondering if part of your proposal has to do with, in some sense, grasping, caring for what you don't already have and what you don't already know. If I'm actively, if part of hope is that deliberate grasping of those things, does that have a relationship? Does that bring it into relationship with the good?
I think so. I think it does, because if I know myself in situ, myself where I am now, how I'm feeling now, what I know now, to be insufficient, to be only a part, whether that means a part of a perspective, a part of the big picture, etc., that means already that I'm taking it as a given that there is more.
Yeah.
And if I'm taking it that there's more, then I think that means I'm acknowledging the reality of something outside of my knowing of it.
Yeah.
And I think that that implicitly leads me to the good.
Yeah. Is it that acknowledgement of that there's something outside of me that I don't know? Right? This more, you said more. It's more
Yes.
than what I know. Is that acknowledgement hope?
That's a good question. Can you ask me that question again?
Yeah. You said that in situ, how I recall it, is in situ, right? Something like sometimes the fact that I'm aware of a sense of more than what I could know or understand, right? And that comes into mind in that sense of more, right? That acknowledgement that's implicit, right? In that acknowledgement. Is that already hope?
No, I don't think it can be.
Okay.
Because then how would hope be different from just learned ignorance?
Yeah.
Hope can't be just learned ignorance.
Yeah.
Because hope is the expression. Hope seems to entail the expression. I keep coming back to attitude. That's frustrating me. Hope implicitly seems to express an attitude toward that which I don't yet know.
Yeah.
And the attitude seems to have a positive valence. I say positive for lack of a better word, by the way. That's not the right word.
Yeah.
And so hope is frustrating to me as a virtue because positive regard as a kind of added quality of my ignorance seems to be in the direction, but it's still not it.
Oh, okay. So is
okay,
it?
But
yeah.
yeah.
Keep going.
So okay, so it's it has something to do. Boy, it's a kind of hope seems to be a name given to the character, the subjective character. No, let me backpedal. Hope has something to do. Hope is like the felt. It is okay. I'm going to try with a new proposal. Hope is the appreciation.
Hope is the appreciation.
Hope is the appreciation of one's own learned ignorance.
Of one's own learned ignorance. Hope is the appreciation of one's own learned ignorance. Okay, so when I say that back to you, how does that resonate?
It doesn't capture hope seems to have something to do with our relationship to time. There's a futurity that is implied by hope. When we hope that something will transpire
Yes.
or not transpire.
Yeah. So you're now
And that
hope has a relationship to time, specifically the future.
right.
Futural.
So hope is almost like the recognition within time okay, the more beyond. So I said that it has something to do with like, it's like a positive regard for the more that we don't yet have and don't yet know. And hope is something like the appreciation of that in time.
Appreciation of that in time, of the, what's that?
Of the learned ignorance.
Okay. Yeah.
Across time.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
let's try that.
yeah.
Let's try that. So my proposal is, thank you for being patient, guys. My proposal is that hope is the appreciation of learned ignorance specifically in relation to time.
Yeah. Hope is the appreciation of learned ignorance, specifically in its relationship to time.
So I have down now that the proposition has moved to hope is the appreciation of one's own learned ignorance across time. Is that fair? I'm not commenting, just to make sure I'm tracking.
That's yes, that's fair.
Can you read that one more time, just a couple more times, just slower?
Hope is the appreciation of one's own learned ignorance across time. And I should also recommend that we should perhaps be moving now from the amplification to the appreciation stage.
Yeah. Anything you want in terms of the proposition as we start to wrap this up? Anything you want to add, adjust?
Yeah, maybe just once more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to modify it slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Because the proposal, as you read it back to me, John, which was accurate, but as you read it back to me, it made it seem like hope was the process of appreciating across time. And I don't think that's it. I think that hope is our response to the problem of time from within the virtue of learned ignorance.
So hope, I'll just say it now, because now it's going to pass to Guy and appreciation. But I heard you say that hope is our response to the problem of time from within the virtue of learned ignorance.
Yes, let's go with that.
Yeah. Right. So what I'm appreciating is just the process of starting to draw that out, right? And like that there's something that there was something that you kept circling around that didn't quite settle. It sounds like it still's not quite settled all the way. Yet I feel closer to it. And I'm wondering about, if I one is I like the relationship, this central thing about the relationship to time and hope, right? And it's really interesting, this sense of this link that you made to learned ignorance, right? Like this learned ignorance and this relationship to hope. And in the very beginning, you spoke of that hope was connected to this acknowledgement of that there's something more to me, to what I want, what could happen, right? There's a sense of like this, an acknowledgement of that there's more, right, than I even know to hope for in some sense. And that seems to lead to this process, I'm imagining it leads to this process of learned ignorance. And in some sense, this learned ignorance I think this is where it gets mysterious to me, right? Is this relationship between learned ignorance and hope. Like there's something there about like the learned ignorance. In some sense, it strikes me as the process of becoming more and more humble, right, to the mystery as time goes on, right? And then there's the sense of hope is hoping. There's an emptiness in this. There's an acknowledgement of an emptying in some sense, right? A humility in the learned ignorance. And hope seems to, in some sense, in some strange way, contradict that. If I start hoping, it seems like learned ignorance would like more lead to something like faith or something. I'm not so sure about hope, I think is where I'm wondering about. And I'm wondering if this is, if I'm kind of stepping into the territory that makes it why all of us are kind of saying hope. I don't know about hope. I don't know if it's the most problematic virtue. Does it feel like I'm getting what you're saying?
You are appreciating it very well and anticipating, I think, already.
Yeah, you're already moving into anticipation. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, there's a mystery. So there's a mystery here. In some sense, so I think one of the things that maybe is missing, implicit, but maybe can be drawn out more, is just this relationship to action, right? And response. In what way is hope already in the act itself, right? Like, in what way is hope already? And I think what's mysterious to me is there's something I want hope to be like deeper down in the primordial sense. If it's going to be a virtue, I want it to be like a lot deeper in like the sense of primordialness, right? And right now, hope feels like it's some kind of added feature to something, right? And not this ontological sense of it. So if maybe we can get to it, and so here's my proposal.
So Chris, remember to write this down, please.
See if my two left brain cells can like get together a linear sentence here. Hope okay, I want to say to the degree that hope is connected to the good in some sense. Is that hope in this way maybe is like an orientation of me continually moving towards the good in the future. That as I get more sophisticated, let's say, as I become more learnedly ignorant, my ability to hope in the sense of like, not even maybe explicitly, but in a more primordial sense, the fact that I'm motivated towards a future, right? Like I would imagine as I become more learnedly ignorant in all the ways we want to talk about this, that that hope will become more and more refined, and in some sense is the capacity to know the future. In some sense, it's my already orientation towards a future. And so hope is a virtue, right, is my ability to, I don't know, hope for a future, to know a future, to be motivated by a future that is more and more like the good.
So, two things. You stretched out and lengthened the word orientation, and then you did a lot of looping gestures around that.
Yeah.
What are you trying to, can you go back to that? What are you trying to convey with this deep term? You said it deeply, orientation, and this.
Yeah. So
did a lot of looping gestures there. Yeah. Yes.
It's something like, I think what I'm getting here is this sense of development and practice, like that there's something going on, I'm imagining, with hope has something to do with how I develop, right? Because it's futural. So in some sense, if I take an action, I think it always implicitly implies a sense of hope, right? In that I'm moving towards it.
So is hope different from aspiration?
I want to say, if it is, I'm not sure if it is, it's more like motivation.
Motivation. So then I'll ask you then, is hope different from desire?
Okay, so desire feels like it's further back. Hope feels like it's more ahead, right? Desire has more of a sense of like a coming back, like the motivation is from behind me in some sense. But hope has a quality of like, I'm orienting, right, to a future, right?
So is this grasping and bringing it towards you keeps repeating?
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to get at with hope? That somehow it's grasping a future and bringing it into the present?
Yes, totally. Yeah. And that there's the orientation part seems to have something about the way that I do that over time, right?
Gets better.
It's better.
More virtuosity in it. Is my understanding it?
Yeah. So maybe what hope is this, right? This thing that does this, and that it gets better over time, right? Something like that.
So how is hope different from foresight?
Foresight seems to be more so it's more like, it's funny when you said foresight, I'm glad you asked this because I got a very different sense of where hope was. Seems like hope is already at play, right? It's already a horizon, right, upon which I then have foresight within. So hope is something like the aspiration of a horizon that I could want, right? And then I have foresight.
So hope is the aspiration of a horizon that I can want and within which I can have foresight. Did I understand you correctly?
Yeah. Yes.
So I get the orientation towards the horizon as the affordance of foresight. I'm getting that part. Yeah. And then what does it so I feel like the key move then
Yeah.
is the aspiration towards the horizon that you could want. Could you open that up a little bit
Yeah.
for me? What does
Yeah.
it mean, aspire towards a horizon?
Here's the thing, is like, I don't know what's going to happen, obviously, in the future, but I don't know if it's possible for me not to want a future, a hope for a future. I'm getting the sense that that's already at play, right? It's a deeper horizon that's already reaching out. Maybe it has something to do with the good. Maybe it's the good that draws me to hope in the first place, right?
Are
And
you trying to embrace the good with these gestures? Like, I'm trying to get,
yeah,
like, is it is it a sense of trust then?
yeah.
Like,
Mm,
there's this affordant horizon, and yet you're placing yourself into, as you said, an aspirational relationship to it.
yeah. Yes. Yeah. I just keep getting, I notice I keep getting a little bit caught on the sense of that I'm wondering about, is it possible for me not to have hope, right? In some sense, even hopelessness is a kind of, what am I doing when I'm hoping? Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you this thing, because this goes towards the primordiality. There's
Yeah.
a difference between specific hope, like hoping that
Yeah.
you pass the test,
Yeah.
and then the kind of hope that is the opposite of hopelessness.
Yes. Yes.
Is that fair
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
you back? You want
Yes.
to talk about the hope that is the contrast to hopelessness, the
Yes.
hope that is the alternative to despair.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes. 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 Yes.
So this isn't directed towards any specific future or any specific event or any
Right.
specific being.
Right.
It seems like it's directed towards being as a whole,
Yes.
or reality as a whole.
Yes.
Is that
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
so? You are.
Yeah, there's something in the fact that I'm already always constituted in relationship to the whole, right? And I'm not indifferent about it, right?
No,
Right.
no.
Hope is that thing that draws me away from despair and towards the good, right? In some sense. Yeah. Hope is that thing that has somehow orients me away from despair towards the good with being, right? With being as a whole.
Right. So, and you're on the horizon.
Yeah.
So it's hope, the sense that even in one's ignorance, that the good still exists in the future.
Yeah. Yes. 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 Yes.
Hmm.
I may not know what the good is. I may not know how its outcome, but like it's like, in some sense, it's like, what is it like if everything goes into despair? I'm in prison, I'm in hell. I can still imagine that there's some way in which I can find the will to live, if you will, right? And this thing that's hoping is connected to that, right? Like whatever, it's like hope as the structure of, yes.
Mm-hmm. So
probably a good place to go into appreciation, I think.
yes. So maybe if I could hear the first proposal and then what the most recent proposal that it evolved into.
Yeah.
So when Guy made his first proposal, the proposal was that to the degree that hope is connected to the good, hope is an orientation of me continually moving toward the good. And that was refined immediately after to the capacity to know the future of that movement toward the good. Its certain movement toward the good. And now the proposal has become that hope is that thing that draws me away from the despair and toward the good, and that structures my will toward the good, that tells me that the good exists in the future.
So what I want to appreciate about that is I think the attempt to get at the primordial sense of hope rather than the everyday sense of hope was an important move towards getting at the virtue. To me, it felt like a clarification of what Chris was struggling with. And the movement into this, well, we may not have a virtue for the hope of particular beings. We may have a hope in being itself. That's what I heard Guy saying, and I appreciated that move. I appreciated that insight. I appreciated also the move from away from attitude, which Chris was finding inadequate, towards orientation, which I think is a better, and orientation towards the horizon, I thought was also a good way of specifying the learned ignorance. I thought that really was a good specification and clarification.
Great. Thank you.
Is that fair? Does that land for you?
Very fair. Yeah. And summarizing of the key points. I really appreciated that. Yes.
So there's a lot that has been given to me by this, and it's very good. I guess my concerns are how hope differs from faith and love in this definition. A sense of the inexhaustibleness of the good at the depths of the being, the ontological good. For me, that's faith. That sense of connectedness. And I can also get how I'm structured by it and how it structures me in love. So the difficulty I'm getting is I can see that these three, no surprise, the Christian virtues, 3 in 1 trinities are going to show up all over the place. That these are going to be interpenetrating, but I'm trying to find out, sort of analogous to Christology, what's unique about the Son. I'm trying to find out what's unique about hope in this. I'm very happy to take what you've said as faith or love.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to get what hope is from this. So let me anticipate a bit, and then I think I'm sensing I'm moving towards a proposal. I'm sensing that hope is the binding of faith to love and love to faith, where love is a call, is an orientation that calls us to action, and faith is an orientation that calls us to relationship. And that hope binds the orientation to relationship, the orientation to being, to the orientation to participation, action, commitment that comes out of love, the reciprocal binding. And I'm trying to get then the sense that hope brings something like the eternity disclosed by us in faith into the temporality of love. That's what hope is doing for us. And we, of course, are always, therefore, in the learned ignorance, because love is a relationship to mystery, and Faith is a relationship to mystery. So my proposal, picking up on both what Chris has said and what Guy has said, is that hope takes that connectedness to the goodness of being found in faith that is, in a sense, eternal, that is not tensed, not put into any tense. And it binds us to the way love is an aspirational, reciprocal, opening, developmental thing, and therefore brings eternity, the eternity of right relationship to being, into the temporality of right relationship to being, and that is what hope is. That's my proposal.
Okay. So I'm going to say that back to you, John, just to make sure I have it. What I'm hearing is that hope is, there's something kind of transitive about hope's virtuosity.
Yes.
That hope has an intrinsically relational role. That what it does is it binds and connects together the goodness of being that is known and expressed through faith under an eternal aspect, and binds it to the act of love that is the temporal orientation to the good. And
Exactly.
that's it.
That's exactly it. That's my proposal.
Okay. So I'm picturing this role. I'm picturing this role as having a kind of mediating, almost a mediating constitution. I want to ask, like, what's the character of this? I'm thinking of this, if these are three persons, to take your your analogy of the Trinity for a moment.
Yeah.
I think we've done a very good job of figuring out what the character of love is and what the character of faith is. And then you have this go-between that is hope, that's somehow taking what is eternal and binding it into the temporal so that it knows the temporal, and that the temporal knows the eternal. There's this conciliatory bringing together, symbolon that I'm hearing.
That's the character of it.
Okay.
That's exactly the character of it. It is the symbolon. It is exactly the symbolic in this deep sense. That's what hope is. It is the realization of the symbolon that binds the faith in eternity and the love in time together.
Okay. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, why is it? I want to come back to this issue of the affect that we often find implicit within examples of hope. How does that affect play into this proposal, if you will? And if the premise of the question is wrong, then tell me that too.
No, the premise is good. The issue of the affect, I think, is central. Because I think it's easy to confuse hope with will. And hope is not will. St. Paul says hope is the evidence of things not seen, which is a very paradoxical thing to say, because of course evident is to make things knowable and visible, right? So I think of hope, I think of it as the affect that goes with the ringing true of a symbol.
Oh, hope as the affect that goes with the ringing true of a symbol.
Yes.
Does that mean that hope is sort of the expression of the relationship, the personal relationship that we have with that symbol?
I think so. I think it represents the degree to which we are internalizing the symbol and also indwelling through it into something beyond it.
Okay.
That's what I mean by ringing true.
Okay.
So the symbol comes alive to you in that you feel it, right? You feel it. There's the affect. You get the receptive affect of it, of you internalizing it. And you also get the prospective affect of you indwelling through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I understand on the one hand, there's this idea that hope is the sonorous effect of the ringing of the cymbal, of the connection between the binding, so that I think of it as this collision. I'm getting this sort of two things sort of coming together in this sort of cosmic way, right? You get the eternal incurring upon the temporal impregnated by the eternal. What is produced has this resounding melody, and that falls on our ears, and that the felt quality of that collision induces something, a kind of movement that we call hope.
Yes, I think that is well said, because I am speaking to the hope that is the opposite of despair.
Okay.
I think I want to stick with that insight that Guy came up. So this is how I understand what people mean when they hope in the cross or they hope in the Dharma.
So how is hope? If hope on the one hand is an expression of the event of the binding of love and faith and its felt quality as it rings upon our ears, that could be almost epiphenomenal. What binds that event to hope's role as an active transitive property that does the binding?
Because what is realized is a participation in the very fabric of emergence and emanation. And that participation properly situates you. I mean, I want to invoke something like the Tao. You are now, you feel situated in the flow of things in a deep way. You feel afforded a future that was not afforded to you before. And again, I'm not talking about specific events being hoped for. I'm talking about what Guy's talking about, that there's a sense in which, right, there is a future there for you still, no matter what. Because the future, when Sam and Frodo are in Mordor and the clouds part and he sees the stars that are untouched by this. So there's a moment where the eternity comes into the temporal, and he is rejuvenated, not because they are being astrological foretelling of his success, but he realizes there is a depth to things that he is now participating in that transcends the greatest evil that is confronting him. That's how it enables us to act.
So that speaks to Guy's observation that hope is efficacious because it motivates. It doesn't just observe something, but that somehow the insight, the recognition that the cosmos is still there beyond the upper boundary of our knowledge is also what moves us toward it. Is that fair?
Yes, because that is the compelling horizon of learned ignorance.
Okay. So I think, is there anything else you want to say about this, John, before I move into appreciation?
Well, actually, we've done a full cycle, so we could actually, you can go into appreciation and anticipation, but then we go into free speech rather than continuing the cycle.
Okay, I'll just move us right into that then.
Right.
Okay, so this is this is really good. This is really good. So this question of I'm really loving how I sensed at the beginning, but didn't know what to do with it. This idea that time has some relation to hope, and that hope is the expression of something in time that isn't ultimately about time, but something that happens when it's put into time. And then I love how you picked that up, Guy, as this, and you picked on the proleptic quality. You picked up the idea that, no, what hope does is it makes the future present, and so binds us to what is ineluctable, binds us to what always persists above us and beyond us, and binds us with the beyondness.
Yeah.
And then, John, the way that you situated hope between faith and love as the intermediary symbolon that connects what is eternally good but unknowable, and what is temporally present and confirmable, and showed that hope is the experience of their binding together, such that the experience of that binding becomes the inducement of the motivation to keep pursuing that which we now know to be real. Is that fair?
Yes. Yes, very much.
Okay. So this is coming a little bit clearer now. I'm starting to see a little bit more. I was very skeptical about this at first, the idea that hope is virtuous. But you both have pointed out in your own ways that it's not about affect, it's about orientation. Your invocation of Samwise Gamgee looking up at this, beautiful. I have that image so fresh in mind, because there's nothing positive. There's nothing positive in the sort of trite, everyday sense of the term positive about that moment when he looks up at the stars. But there's something ecstatic about it.
Yeah.
The thing that I would like to bring in that we haven't talked about explicitly but talked around is the way in which hope is absurd. Okay.
You mean
because
paradoxical? What do you mean by absurd?
What I mean is that when Sam looks up at the sky and sees that somehow the presence of the stars above the clouds gives a renewed motivation, a fire of energy and vitality to their quest. There is no logical reason why that should be true. There is no logical reason at all. And yet, the symbolic presence and presentation of that continuing cosmos beyond those clouds incentivizes or re-incentivizes the quest. And hope often seems to me to be invoked in the most religious terms when it seems to deny the material facts and circumstances that otherwise provide the worst of prognoses. And so it seems to me, John, that going hand in hand with the idea of hope of being a symbolon between the temporal love and the eternal faith, that there's something necessarily absurd about it that we have to convert into paradox in order to actually assume it. How do we assume hope? Because hope, a proposal for hope, needs to give us some guidance as to how hope is actually assumed and cultivated. And if hope is always in defiance of the worst of prognoses, and I don't mean in any one case, but I mean, let's say our death and finitude as human beings.
Yeah.
How does the proposal for hope as the symbolon between the temporal and the eternal relate to its absurdity in the face of the logical material constraints of existence? That's where I'd like us to go from here.
So how I respond to that is, yes, it is not a logical relation. It is and Nagel is absolutely right about this, and I think Kierkegaard is too. It is a clash of perspectives, and it is the ability. What is happening in there, of course, is that Sam is taking the perspective of eternity. And then that brings to mind Spinoza's idea that it is possible not by reason, and he, the greatest of all the rationalists, the most logical of all the rationalists, right? But it is possible to achieve blessedness precisely because we have the capacity that he calls scientia intuitiva and I call prajna, which is the ability to have, right, that interpenetration, like the letters and the word, the temporal and the eternal, the gestalt and the features. Yeah. We have that capacity, the ecstatic capacity for prajna and for scientia intuitiva. So for me, what's becoming clear is that hope is a participation that affords the realization of scientia intuitiva. Yeah. And the scientia intuitiva is the response. That's Spinoza's proposal. And that is how we can, go ahead.
The scientia intuitiva is a response to the interpenetration.
Scientia intuitiva is the response to the absurdity of how they can clash and undermine each other. Yeah. And that they can be resolved in a state that transcends them both.
Yeah, because hope is that thing that I have that would like see the clash to do the work of untangling that and just and going into it more, right? Like in showing it not as a clash, but as a paradox, let's say, right? As we're talking about it. Hope seems to be, I think I'm just appreciating the primordial sense now of hope, right? Of that hope is something I find I can explicate, right? In some sense, I can express it in language, but it's something I actually find myself having in my orientation in some way. And that when you talk about the ringing, right? This ringing, this thing about what he said, I was just like, I felt you distinguish a feeling, like a sense or like an ontological feeling that I've had that runs through everything, right? When there is hope present, in this ring, when you said the affect that goes with the being true of a symbol.
So this goes then helps me to understand the biblical notion better, I think, if it's not presumptuous. Hope is a sati, an anamnesis, a deep remembering that's also a re-identification with, right, one's blessedness. Right?
Church bells.
Yeah.
Church bells. Everything that you've just said, church bells. That's what the church bell is doing.
Yes.
It is an enacted symbol of hope.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
because
yes.
Don't you? I mean, I'm thinking, and this is just because of my upbringing. I'm not advocating for a particular position, but I'm thinking about St. Paul's sense of having fought the good fight. He's facing his death. He's ultimately losing, and in many ways he lost, and he's driven out of town after town. But and he talks about keeping the faith, and he talks about love, right? But you get the sense of him remembering, he's got this vision in which time and eternity are interpenetrating each other and compelling him, and he's remembering his blessedness, and that keeps him from despair in a powerful way. Now, the problem I have I'm using Spinoza's term because I want to get the biblical allusion. The danger I'm feeling is it gives the sense that somebody is blessing us, right? Which is not what I'm trying to articulate. I'm trying to articulate the sense we have of not something blessing us, but of participating in this. I'm struggling now, but that's
what I'm getting is that, if I can maybe put it just in a phrase, is that hope is that which keeps. You said keep. As soon as you said keep, Hope is that which keeps faith in time and allows us to love it.
Yes, 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 yes. And for me, that goes towards your point that this is ultimately a living relationship between perspectives rather than an inferential relationship between propositional descriptions of states of affairs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Say it again, a living relationship between perspectives, right? Versus relationship between propositions. Yeah.
That are descriptions of states of affairs. And let's be clear about this. We can have very accurate description about the negative states of affairs that are around us, but the perspectival relationship, right? What we might call the vertical dimension, that in a sense, and this is the Stoic notion, right, of the meaning being something in which we can participate profoundly as opposed to the course of events. And that, Seneca says, when you're cornered, you can still leap into the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That for me, that's what you were putting your finger on, Guy, about how a future is always available to you.
Yeah.
But it's not an ontic future, it's an ontological future.
Yeah. 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 It's in the structure of temporal. Yeah. It's in the very structure of temporality itself. Yeah.
And intelligibility.
Yeah.
Intelligibility.
Yeah.
The orientation of hope is a vertical orientation, but set upon the axis of the horizontal.
Yes, it's the nexus.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we should draw it to a close here.
Great. Gives me much hope, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.